Welcome to our executive interview series on strategies for moving into the AI era. I'm Wyatt Cash with Scoop News Group, and in this session we want to talk a little about using AI responsibly. And joining us for this session are Brian Abrahamson, Associate Lab Director and Chief Digital Officer for the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, and also Michael Mattmiller, Senior Director, Government Affairs at Microsoft. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Brian, I'd like to start with you. What are some of the key issues that agency leaders must really consider about responsible use of artificial intelligence?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, that is a broad topic and there's a lot to that. I think at a very fundamental level, I think people have to recognize, and leaders need to recognize, that artificial intelligence is not infallible, right? This notion of hallucinations that we've all heard a lot about can give you a very inaccurate response in a very confident way. And so making sure that we're asking the questions around if we're using AI models to drive business decisions, to drive field activities, to drive elements that might involve human safety or critical decision making, how do you make sure that you have that human in the loop or that human governing what that outcome is? We can talk a little bit more, I think, later about a number of other risks that some of the generative AI and new AI capabilities introduce. When you think about threat vectors around fraud, and when you think about threat vectors around impersonation, there's some new risks emerging that I think we have to be cognizant of.
And Michael, what do you see as some of the key issues that leaders need to be thinking about?
Well, I think, Brian, you hit the nail on the head that this is a very exciting technology, but it does introduce new risks. And so leaders need to be thinking about what can be done to both encourage innovative uses of this technology, to learn from it, to try it out, but also to recognize it's a co-pilot, that there still needs to be that human element that we need to be able to assess and mitigate risk. It's why at Microsoft we developed our AI principles that guide how we develop our solutions and how we actually deploy AI. We want to make sure the technology is used in a way that respects fairness, that maintains privacy and security, and is ultimately accountable to humans, as well as being inclusive and transparent in how it's being deployed.
So next, Brian, I'd like to ask, talk a little about the policy safeguards that you're putting in place at your organization to make sure AI is used responsibly across the organization.
One of the most significant that we've put in place is you have to disclose the use of artificial intelligence when it is contributing to the work product. So at a national laboratory, as an example, we produce thousands of peer-reviewed research publications every year. Generative AI can be a very useful tool in helping to construct abstracts and helping to conduct elements of synthesis of other people's publications. But to the extent that AI was used, it has to be disclosed. And that's not only for scientific integrity purposes, it's to make sure that when others are reviewing your work, they know that AI was a part of generating that work, and they can take an appropriate stance in scrutinizing those elements. The other for us is outside of publications, software code generation is a very significant opportunity. And we have hundreds of software engineers at the institution. The ones that we have piloting code generation, love it. But you have to have, again, the same disclosure requirements, and you have to have the appropriate reviews in place to make sure that what you see is what you get in terms of the software.
So next, I'd like to ask, what measures should be put in place when it comes to issues around using AI, but also safeguarding privacy and security in the data that employees are using? Brian, if you'll start that first.
I'll speak to this primarily from a security perspective. I think this notion of trustworthy AI and using this responsibly is something that the recently released executive order places a strong emphasis on. I don't know that a lot of leaders recognize some of the risks from a security perspective that we have. So PNNL actually was involved in a bit of a think tank across multiple agencies in co-authoring a document around artificial intelligence risks from a security perspective. And when you think about the things that were highlighted as concerns, right? Autonomous replication of AI models, meaning the AI replicating the AI. When you think about dangerous knowledge, so having knowledge inherent in the model on how to do things that, frankly, we don't want out in the public domain. When you think about cyber offensive capabilities, right, the ability to generate malware and things like this is a risk that in the security element we need to be thinking about. There are a number of others along the lines of these could be some bad days if we as a nation, between the government and the private sector, don't start to really understand how to drive that. So when you think about safeguarding artificial intelligence and the models, there's a lot of good work that's already going on that I think the executive order is going to be the catalyst to help accelerate.
Makes perfect sense, and I think that executive order does lay out a number of great things, not the least of which is encouraging the use of the NIST AI risk management framework. It's great to see the federal government taking such a strong leadership position in practices that can identify and help mitigate privacy and security risk. But the first step anytime we work with AI is to realize that the AI has to operate on data. And so if we can't identify the data we have, the risks associated with it, and how to mitigate it, then we're going to have challenges downstream. So I would encourage the development of data classification policies if they don't exist, making sure that there is compliance as we go into an AI model with what types of data are the right fit for the model, and especially understanding when governments work with technology partners, can the AI service from that partner uphold the requirements around privacy, around security that are expected? And that includes compliance issues like FedRAMP, as well as other types of laws and regs. So I'd say that those are some important considerations. Data classification, knowing your technology partner and the commitments they are making to meet your expectations.
Those are some great points, and I thank you for kind of putting those out there. Last, I'd like to just see what recommendations would you offer government leaders, to be able to implement AI more effectively and faster for the use of their organization's mission and also for the public at large. Brian?
I think a critical element is one of, for every advocate and cheerleader out there for AI and how that can revolutionize or transform elements of your business or your model or your organization, you've got to have a healthy dose of skepticism. You've got to have the skeptic baked in to your process, to your design, to your testing, to make sure that it's being used responsibly, you're not having unintended consequences, things like this. So we find culturally making sure that you have the right balance of skepticism and advocacy is incredibly important.
And Brian, I liked what you said in your session with Candace Ling just a moment ago, where you talked really about leadership and tone at the top in an organization, and making sure that leaders do balance their excitement for the technology with the responsible use that needs to occur, putting the structures in place that allow to move faster, and also to bring the workforce along with the technologists who might be excited. We did a study a few months ago as part of our Work Lab initiative where we found 70% of employees in government and private sector were willing to trust AI with some of their work because there's just too much happening today for everyone to get done in 8 hours. So there is some enthusiasm, it's cautious optimism. So investing in that workforce and the training, making sure leaders are giving them the guidance about how to responsibly try the use of this new technology. I think if we can do those things, we'll see really responsible adoption.
Well, and just to build on that, one of the other things we heard, I think, is getting leadership to really use AI, personally, so they understand what it can do, what its impact is. It's got to be an important step to also investing in the training eventually for the whole organization to really capitalize on it. So I think those are some great points. Gentlemen, thank you so much. I think Michael Mattmiller and also Brian Abrahamson, I think some of the things that you shared with us today really offer a lot of insights to our audience. So thank you for taking a few minutes to join us.
Happy to do it.
Thank you.